right, welcome everybody. I am on location in New Holland, Pennsylvania at ModLogic, and we're going to be talking about one of the largest modular permanent hospitals ever built, and we're going to show that a little bit later this week. But first, today, we have an awesome show for you. Commercial office space is in a state of uncertainty. Affordable housing demands are on the rise. In an era of unprecedented change, could an opportunity come to the forefront? Today, we are pleased to welcome Doug Hayden, who offers a new solution to housing in major cities, leveraging a prefab approach and a reduce, reuse, recycle mindset. But before we get into all of that, we got to give a big thanks to our sponsors. So big shout out to them, and we'll come right back to you. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Are you looking to start a factory? Optimize your existing factory, streamline your production, or take your team to the next level? Whatever your needs are, Forward has a solution for you. Reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. Halleck Ltd. has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and producing innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the United States and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for off-site modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Go to their website, halleckltd.com. All right, remember to go and thank all of our sponsors. We cannot bring you all these informative, innovative conversations without the support of them and all of you out there. So without further ado, let's hop into it and bring Doug Hayden on. Doug, how are you, my friend?
I am good. Thank you, David.
Hey, this is awesome, man. I'm super excited to talk about Arthroto and what you guys are doing, because this is a different approach, right? We're always talking about new construction. We're always talking about rehabbing older residential buildings. And you said, wait a minute, we got all these empty office buildings in all these cities around the world. There's no reason people should be sleeping on the streets. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, and it's not only should they be sleeping on the streets, but almost every single conversion that's been done since time immemorial has been done with conventional construction.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, I was in the prefab space for converting office space into office space. So we would do it in a prefab. It wasn't until COVID that it started to resonate that maybe now we have to look to do office to residential. And it's just exploding. Like, it is just exploding.
Yeah, so why don't we get into a little bit about who you are and where you come from. In fact, Doug, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will bring your wife on, and she's very good on mic and audio.
Oh,
she has her own podcast, but it could get a little embarrassing for you, but you only have about a minute and a half to do it. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'll just start with actually where I met my wife, which was Las Vegas. She's actually a waitress there, so that's where we met. And I'm in Canada, so I'm actually from Calgary, and I've lived in Toronto. I've actually lived all over. But real quick, the sort of where this all came from, prior to getting involved with any kind of prefabrication or modular or what have you, I was actually a specialist in bringing in small companies that are tech companies into larger. So I would bring companies that would fit, they were usually software companies, into companies like IBM or Apple or Lucent, Northern Telecom, British Telecom. So that was sort of my raison d'etre. I actually wound up working for a company that did office, prefabricated office. And the reason for that was that we would bring in systems from companies like Cisco and Lucent and bring that into the platform well before you'd have to do any conventional construction. So, and then the last 20 years have just been spent in residential real estate, so well over 2,000 transactions. And prior to that, I actually had CCIM designation with a company called SMED, which was purchased by Hayworth Office Furnitures. And then a lot of people from that company went to start the company that I'm now working with, which is called Dirt. And we are now heading up their residential division. So that's really what Arthroto is all about.
Well, I tell you what. So we have a short video that we want to play because it is spectacularly done, I should say. And then we're going to get into a presentation, and you're going to run us through kind of a slide deck of all the things that you're working on. So why don't we show the intro video, and it's going to set us up for the rest of the conversation. Sound like a win?
Let's roll.
Offices are still less than 50% occupied as return to office appears to have stalled.
And Amazon today started a fresh round of job cuts.
Take a minute and think about how your life has changed in the last 3 years. The world is changing faster than ever before. Technology is evolving at an unprecedented breakneck pace and disrupting everything, everywhere, all at once. Billions of people around the globe are hyper-connected and communicate instantly through pictures, video, words, and thoughts. Every business, every industry, every individual understands that things will never be the same again.
Manhattan's office market having the worst month for new leases. 150,000 tech workers have been laid off in 2022 alone.
And with rapid change comes economic upheaval and displacement. Companies large and small are being forced to make unforeseen cuts to staffing, programs, and office leases. In this tumultuous economic environment, many companies are cutting back on and consolidating office space. More and more companies have chosen flexible working solutions affecting how, when, and where we work. All this change has left commercial office space in a dilemma and many in a financial crisis. And as in any crisis or period of rapid change comes great opportunity. At the same time, many building owners and office leasing agencies are under massive pressure to find new uses for empty office spaces. Governments at all levels are looking for solutions to solving one of society's most pressing issues: housing. Municipalities and many building owners aren't waiting for things to magically get better. They are the first to take action on converting empty office buildings into residential housing. Converting unused office space into residential housing is a viable solution that solves many of our society's pressing problems with an obvious solution. And why not? Breathing new life into an old, unused office space has distinct advantages, like saving older buildings from demolition, preserving timely architecture, and revitalizing a community. The benefits to updating and replacing old mechanics with newer, more energy-efficient systems increases the building's value and helps offset operating costs. This is why cities like Chicago, New York, Calgary, and Washington, D.C. have instituted programs to finance and facilitate the conversion of office buildings into residential housing. But many, if not all of the past and current office to residential conversions are sticking with old, outdated construction techniques. These older construction methods work, but take time to build out, incur extra on-site costs, and are wasteful. There is a better way, a more efficient way, and the best part? It's available today. Prefabricated interior solutions produce less waste, use sustainable materials, and excel at meeting hard-to-hit ESG targets. Plus, prefabrication is proven to save build-out time and only involves a fraction of the on-site labor. Better yet, we offer the advantage of working with proven system integrators that come together in providing end-to-end smart building solutions, ensuring the occupants and owners experience lower operating costs, 24-hour monitoring, and peace of mind security. Working together as an integrated delivery team, we apply proven prefabrication methodologies and state-of-the-art manufacturing techniques to deliver a superior product, well ahead of the timelines of conventional construction. Not only can we deliver a superior product faster, but our projects align with our clients' environmentally friendly and socially conscious practices. This ensures all stakeholders, from investors to the communities affected, are well served. We believe this is an exciting and challenging time in the residential housing industry, and that new solutions for one of our society's most pressing problems are right in front of us. By making the most of what we already have, we're well on our way to transforming what has become a problem into a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Welcome to Arthroto.
Well done. I love it, Doug. Thank you
Wow.
very much. I mean, honestly, well done. Super impressed with the quality of that and bringing in the emotion. So why don't we get to it now and hop right into the presentation and tell us exactly how you're achieving what that video is talking about.
Yeah, well, and yeah, if you can throw it up. The really the first thing I want to do is thank you for the opportunity just to present kind of what we're
Sure.
doing. We literally launched our company 7 weeks ago. So this all started. Arthroto, by the way, means join or joining in Greek, and the .com was available, so we jumped on that in a big hurry. So if anybody was wondering where the name comes from, that's where it comes from. But again, really appreciate the opportunity. I think this is the industry podcast, and just so everybody knows, we're actually going to be in New York mid-September at a Capital Conference. So if there's anybody here that's in New York, reach out, let us know. We are having our own event on the 13th, September 13th, and the Capital Conference is on the 14th. So office to residential conversions, there's really nothing new except what's happened since COVID. That's really sort of changed things. So what's really happened, I lived through .com. So, and if you were in the technology business, and we were actually in the office space business at that time and technology, and one of our clients was actually Cisco Systems. And we went from having a contract to convert to build out almost 5 million square feet. We were just in the process of signing that. .com comes along, and then 9/11, and everything just got nailed. So our book of business dropped by 80% in just a matter of a very short time. So a lot of people were affected. I think that same thing is going on right now, and I'll just talk a little bit about the market, just so everybody gets a scope of the size of the market and the market opportunity. But clearly, there's financial distress going on, especially in the office market, and we're even seeing keys being handed over on some very large projects, some of them in the hundreds, if not almost billions of dollars. Office buildings are going dark. This all started with COVID, and then folks just not wanting to go back to the office. You got huge leases being canceled. Facebook walked away from $2.4 billion in lease obligations. And that wasn't even the biggest one. There's even bigger ones than that. So what's happened is that also office valuations are crashing, because if you don't have tenants, if you don't have leases, you don't have a business. So you just got a big giant empty building, right, that you're paying the electricity for and the taxes on. So it's called the office apocalypse. A lot of cities have woken up to it. Calgary's sort of an outlier, which is where I'm from, and there's a reason for that. Now, the partners that we work with have fabrication facilities both in Canada and the United States. So most of our business is going to be within the United States. And by the way, our offices are in Calgary and in Dallas. So there was a very interesting study that was done by the Boston Consulting Group. And if you ever want to look for it, just do zombie buildings, Boston Consulting. And long story short, 1.5 billion square feet of office space will be vacant and unused by 2028. We actually think it's a little bit higher. And so that's primarily BNC office. So by the way, most of what we're seeing is BNC office space being emptied. The big marquee buildings are not emptying out. As a matter of fact, demand is actually higher for those buildings. So a lot of employers, instead of maybe having 20 floors in a B or C space, are maybe only taking 2 floors in an A space. So it's more marquee, and it's not designed anymore like the traditional office. It's more like you'll probably be coming in once or twice a week to hold meetings or for training or that sort of thing. So it's not a very traditional office at all, which is also quite good. Washington, New York, Los Angeles, Calgary, they're the outliers. New York alone has identified more than 300 million square feet that potentially could fall under the conversion blanket. And then it's the municipalities that have first recognized that there's a problem, because not only did COVID hollow out their downtown cores, nobody's returning to office. So it is the municipalities that are sort of driving the bus here. On top of all of this, there's a housing shortage. So just in the United States alone, and this is borne out by several, like the National Apartment Owners Association and multi-housing, there is a shortage of at least 4.6 million apartments by 2030. New York alone has a requirement for 560,000 housing units. Now, you know, in New York that most of those are going to wind up being apartment style. Very few are going to be townhouses or houses. And they just announced just a couple days ago that they have a program that they're fast tracking a minimum to 20,000 units for immediate conversion from office to residential. So I call this the Wall Street. Like, all this revolves around what's going on in Wall Street. So you've got huge companies like Blackstone, BlackRock, Brookfield, and others are defaulting on their portfolios. They're literally turning the keys back. So behind that, what you've also got are people like ourselves that see this as a huge opportunity. And there's what they call like dry powder or distressed asset money. So we're seeing these groups, Silverstein, BGO, Artemis Capital, Goldman Sachs, they're all setting funds now. There's over 10 billion that they've set aside just in the last 6 months to acquire unused office space and convert it. And to date, with the diagnostics that have run in terms of conversions, we've run over 1,000 office buildings through the diagnostics that we have for conversions. And then the big outliers, we can talk a little bit about that more. So if you've got an empty office building, there's a number of things you can do with it. You can let it sit empty. You can wait for more tenants to come, although that seems to be folly because nobody's renewing the leases. And we can actually see that through a lot of our tools. So you know what's coming down the pipe. On top of that, what's coming down the pipe is that there's a lot of reset mortgages. So mortgages that were running maybe at 3% on the commercial side for office are going to reset at 8%. So not only do you have no tenants renewing, but your mortgages are going to go up on any buildings that had mortgages that were purchased in the last 5 to 10 years. So our feeling is that most are going to wind up with conversion simply because of the pressure from housing and from the cities and the municipalities, and they're asking governments to kick in. So we have already started to look at this, and Calgary's actually the outlier because Calgary's had to deal with this empty office space for almost 10 years. So they came up with a program actually before COVID. So we're the only ones that sort of sat back and looked at this and said, okay, everybody's converting in a traditional way. Everybody that I polled was converting traditionally. Almost all the conversions were to rental. So instead of, converting to condos to sell, everybody's converting to rental or to hospitality. And we're seeing some mixed use. But our approach was that prefabrication was probably the best solution for all kinds of reasons. One, the primary one, is that we know we've been doing it in office for over 20 years, so it's not new. It's just you're going office to office, now you're doing office to residential. And that's where we really started to focus. The advantage of prefab for office, no different than prefab for housing, right? Cost savings, less labor on site. There's a lot of savings, the methodologies, and we've got key partners. A big one, though, that we address that a lot of traditional cannot do is the fact that we help meet ESG targets. So the big pension funds and the big REITs, they're so big that they literally have ESG portfolio products that they have to meet. So they know it's about helping the community. They know it's about sustainability. They know all those things. So that's within their portfolio. They have ESG targets they have to meet. We help them meet or exceed that. So again, prefabrication is going to be seen as a more of an outlier. Mm-hmm. How we work the market. We're an integrated delivery team. That's our approach. So we see ourselves as an integrator. So we actually know and are working with the companies that can build out these systems. So we work with a company called DIRT. We're working with Armstrong Industries. They do ceilings and that sort of thing. Who can integrate that. Schneider Electric, Honeywell. There's a number of companies that we've aligned with. We bring all those systems together to deliver an end-to-end interior solution. So that in terms of if you're a building owner, it's a very different process than if you're just dealing, you go to your general contractor and then you're talking to your architect and then it's like, we've got to take the building down and then we've got all this construction we have to do. We can literally design the environments for them beforehand and we can go floor by floor by floor. And it's literally coming out of a factory. So again, very similar to what you see with housing. Mm-hmm. And just all the advantages that you have there. So we're just leveraging that. Our main focus is on the interior. We don't get rid of the general contractor. We actually work with general contractors that really understand this process. And by the way, there's a few that are actually looking more and more to prefabrication and volumetric as part of their offering. So we're in discussions with a lot of those types of GCs. So long story short, they still have to handle the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So, but we use things like vacuum plumbing and other things that help us get onto those floor plates quicker. So what do we do? What's our work? So this is actually some of our work, everything that you see in here that we do. Now you'll see that that there's reveals in our wall systems and things of that nature. The panels can be, different sizes, but everything from casework to the walls to the ceiling, everything is done in a factory, and then we show up on site to assemble. I'm not sure if you're going to blast me with questions, or we'll wait till this is over and then we can start.
Yeah. No, I think let's get through the presentation, because the questions are starting to get in there. And
Okay.
I think let's save the questions for the end. So for those of you that are out there, we are going to do a Q&A at the end of the presentation, and then we'll see what everybody has to say. There's a lot of good questions already.
Okay, awesome. So we, of course, everything's factory built. So again, there's nothing new to this audience, but we work with Dirt Environmental and others to get our products kind of built in the factory. Now we're using a system. So we do a digital twin of any building that we're going to kind of work on. So we work with a digital twin. So everything from, using CAD to other systems. But when it has to go to the factory, what happens is we take those files and we put it into a proprietary system called ICE. And the two companies that use ICE are Dirt Environmental, the company that we work with, and Armstrong Industries, the ceiling people. So they both use ICE and we use ICE. So we actually design those systems. So once we know what they are, we can design, we're called ICE files. So everything from an ICE file, once it's landed on, once the interior designer has picked their, what they want from the, the 500 or 600 potential materials that we use and can incorporate. Once we've landed on all that, everything goes to the factory and literally can be built case by case and floor by floor. So the nice thing about converting an office is once you've landed on the floor plate, basically everything from the third floor up is going to be the same. Might have a bit different at the top. One of the other things that's really interesting is that just by our math, we think about 80% of the conversion market is going to be in buildings that are occupied maybe 50% or less. So in other words, the building owner sitting there, that's what the zombie building really is. It's a building that the owner doesn't want to sell, that is maybe 50% occupied, and they don't necessarily think that they want to change what's left on that building or invest in that building to keep office. So what do they do with the building? What do they do with that 10 floors? Well, if they had a solution that they can convert that into residential or mixed use, we offer that solution without a lot of disruption. So that's the other thing that is a big part of our formula and our kind of metric going forward. We can convert parts of a building, floors of a building versus the entire building. Almost every other conversion project that's been done to date, they need the entire structure to work on. So we can talk a little bit more about that. So when we looked at it, we offer everything from the casework, right? So we'll do the kitchens and all the rest of it, but we can do the casework. And by the way, all of our panels, they're all marked. So let's say you do an office, you're doing like 6 floors one day, and then 2 years later, you want to maybe do a couple more floors, or one of these panels gets damaged. Everything that has been designed is tracked. So let's say one of these panels gets damaged. If you pull it off, behind it, and by the way, you need special tools to access all of this. Behind that panel, there's a barcode. You scan the barcode, send it to us, and we can actually replicate that exact piece with that exact finish and everything. So we've got this whole after installation support that we also offer that we can do. We do small spaces. This one's interesting. Those look like pictures on that wall. They're not. That's actually a glass wall, and behind that, that's printed onto a substrate that goes onto that wall. So all of this we can do. That's a raised desk in there.
What's the purpose of that?
It's primarily for art and visuals. So this is just a demo to show you what can be done.
Yep.
But a lot of it's just patterns. So it's designed to break up. It can also provide, and I'll show you a wall. So we can actually put glass into walls. So, you've got that opaque, so you can have some light coming through and that sort of thing. But it shows how we can utilize different materials. We're really big on glass. Almost all of our walls are an MDF with some kind of a coating. So a lot of it's powder coated, or we'll use a veneer of some kind as well. So we can use all of that on the walls. And it basically allows a huge amount of flexibility, like a lot of flexibility. So these are walls that we do. We're messing around with different types of glass. So, you know, if you want to use, like I said, an opaque glass or a pattern glass, notice the ceiling in this shot as well. So all of that is incorporated by us. So we do the ceiling, all of it. So when you go up in the plenum, we can actually produce a very soundproof apartment or whatever it is that we're doing, right? Whether it's residential or whether it's, you know, life sciences, we can produce all of that. And by the way, we work with timber as well. So we used engineered timber in a lot of our solutions as well. So there's a real nice mix of what we can do. So we can bring a lot of natural products into the environment. So we can do the wall panels, and they don't have to always be straight. They can be curved. They can be anything. We do incorporate ceiling systems into our solution. And then I'll show you kind of what we're doing with that as well. We're really big on tech, and you can see the types of ceiling materials that we're working with now. So we can do some really brilliant work just in terms of making the space very different from anything else that you might ever see. So we do a lot of incorporating tech into our environment. This is a good example of, you know, kind of kitchen, what we can do with kitchen. So you can see in the back, again, all the panels, right? Everything is done off-site and brought on-site. Now, obviously, some of the things like the backdrops or the back splash and everything, that is done separately. But up to that point, everything is prefabricated. Some things would have to be, you know, custom ordered, but you give us the dimensions of things like the ovens and everything, we'll literally build around those solutions. Home office is big, especially when you're in your smaller space. That's one of those raisable desks. We did all the casework and everything in that shot. We can do public spaces or common spaces as well. That shows timber frame. Notice the up top there to the ceiling. We work a lot. So if you've got a space that maybe you want to keep the plenum open, so you see a lot of that in New York. If you want to see that, you can use, we have sound deadening materials that we get from Armstrong, and we can do some really interesting ceiling treatments. Again, all this. So you're asking about the glass artwork. There's a good example of it in use.
Yeah.
So you can, again, see there. And again, the ceiling, that's all movable ceiling. So we can get into that space. Hospitality is another big one for us. And that is also, a lot of the owners are looking at, okay, can I do hospitality and can I do rental? So if they want to break it up, 2 of the projects in Calgary have done that. So they have gone from rentals on top to 5 floors of hospitality, and then on the bottom is retail. And these were empty office buildings before. This is an example of one of the folding walls that we have. So, and by the way, you can do this with 2 panels, or, you know, sky's the limit, and everything's supported from above. So, you know, that there's no weight going onto the floor. So you can literally open up an entire space. Now, this comes in handy if you want a dining room, let's say, in your space. So you can have a dining room on one side, you can close it off and then open it up to something like a living room. Obviously, this is a commercial space. This is actually our New York showroom. But it gives you an idea of what can be done with the wall systems. Now, I'm going to go into life sciences, and then I'll kind of wrap this up. The reason life sciences is so important, if you think residential is hard, try doing life sciences, right? Our walls can support 700 pounds of weight, just each bracket alone. So these systems are designed to they're very robust. But I mean, just if you look at the amount of, you know, in terms of what has to come through the wall, not only the fact that we have to integrate different systems, whether it's gas, whether it's water, whether it's, you know, electricity, low voltage, all of it, we have to deal with all of those systems, and even things like that are above. So we're very good at bringing in multiple systems in terms of integration. So that's the other thing. So, and by the way, there's vacuum plumbing with all that. All the panels are removable. Okay, so if there's a problem or something has to be accessed, easy, special tool, you can pop it off. So if anybody has to get behind anything, it's super easy. So maintenance is very easy. As a matter of fact, some of the building owners, we can supply them with panels. They can build their own. They can just buy the tool sets from us. Behind the wall, you can basically put anything, but that kind of gives you an idea. So everything we build is aluminum frame, and that's all scalable. So if you're using the ICE system, if you want to add 2 inches to that, you just do it in the ICE file, and it's fabricated that way. You want to bring up the reveals, you can go from anywhere from 24 to 6 feet. So you can do all of those. we're big into when we get back into the system. So what we do when we're converting a building, the electricians, all they really have to do is drop a box up in the ceiling, and the whips will come off of that, and then we connect to those whips. So we're more about installation as opposed to build on site. So that there's big advantages to that. I'm sure you know. We do have raised floor. We don't recommend it for residential, but in some cases we have to use it. But we've got it. We've been working with it for some time. Almost everything that we work with, we try to keep up in the plenum. So now the other thing, if you're using vacuum plumbing, you don't have to do with the amount of coring. This again shows how easy it is to maintain. So these just pop off with a tool. So if you have to get at anything, you can, or you want to change something out or it gets damaged, easy to do. This gives you a rough idea of just how much can go behind that wall and the floor and the ceiling. So again, I don't want to say sky's the limit, but I think we've pretty much dealt with anything out there that can possibly. And this is our kind of motto for the whole kind of conversion. So construction without disruption. So we think that's where we play. I haven't even talked about things like water detection, water arrest, all of the things we do. You can pull us off the slide deck if you want at this point.
Yeah.
So,
Dyer, I got a couple questions for you, and then we'll go to some of the comments as well, because I know between Julian and Henry and others in there, they got some good questions. The office building owners that own these buildings traditionally, let's say it's Goldman Sachs, or maybe they are in the rental space or the residential space somewhere. How does that typically work? Do they typically sell to a residential person, or do they now become landlords and stakeholders in the sale of this building and the fit out?
There's a number of things that are happening right now. So, and we actually have kind of, for lack of a better term, I'll call them market segments, but it's more market engagement. So we can work with a building owner and just, we can come with the solution. So we would work with the building owner, help them if, they may already have a general contractor. Certainly we have architects that really understand how to work with our solutions. They're all over North America. So we can help in that respect. So we'll actually help them convert that space. So we do the entire build out, and we can actually go down to costing, where our pencil is a lot sharper than others. The other is we have building owners, and these are large. They're not small. I mean, we're getting some big building owners. They have huge portfolios, and they're debating what they should do with their B and C space. So they are looking at converting it. And then now we come along and we said, look, we'll work with you. Like if we can do it on a cost basis, and you want to develop an entire program where we share the revenue out of this, we're fine with that too. So that's another way that we can work. We also have a distressed assets group ourselves that we're working with capital partners to purchase the buildings to convert ourselves. So all three of those are how we engage right now.
Can the buildings be converted back to office space if workers decide to come back and they wanted more money on the office, or are these all for sale? Or
well, that actually leads to a really good question, because our system's very flexible. So if there is a change, I don't think it's going to go back into office. I just don't. I think offices, the way people work with office has really changed. Bill Gates said it best. He said that what COVID did in terms of how people treat the office, he said it brought how we work as a society forward 10 years, if not further. And I think that's really what's happened here. So the way people work, people with families, a lot of women prefer to work from home, or they prefer flexible, just for all kinds of reasons. And it's really only the kind of the C-suite and others that are really focused on being in the office every day. So there's just this big change around it. So, but to your point, if let's say that's that whole point of, let's say you've got a 30-story building, you want to convert half of it to residential, and then all of a sudden, somebody vacates, and now you're like, well, do I do residential? Well, maybe I do life sciences. Maybe I want to turn the rest into, extended care or some other kind of facility. We have that flexibility. And by the way, if you wanted to do more residential, you could literally take your order and run it through again into the system. So you've already been through it. So it's that much easier to do.
I'd love it, man. I'd love to have a work-live space, right? Where I could live on one floor and then there's all this office space and business happening. And I don't feel like I'm sitting in a studio island by myself all the time, right? Virtually. So
Well, and
very
that's
cool.
that's the thing with the moving wall. And we actually have a
Yeah.
quote going on now that is a college that has identified a building.
Yeah.
So they're going to put the school on the bottom 5. Student housing is going to be the rest of the building.
Let's get to some questions here real quick and some comments. Dr. Brett Musson, good friend from California, super wicked smart. My impression is that the greater challenge in office to home conversions is the MVP. So multi-trade racks would seem to be more important offering. Can you speak to that? Which you touched on a little bit.
Yeah, so we know that, and that's where the general contractors come in. So we know that the MEP is the biggest lift in changing a building. So from office to residential. So we tried to meet some of that just in terms of we prefer to use vacuum plumbing simply because you don't have to core as much. But when it comes to electrical and other, we've had discussions with Snyder. They actually do something called, it's like almost they call it the portable or e building home system. So they actually help. They can actually build a lot of the systems separately. They show up almost in a container and they can go to the building. But yeah, we work with the generals to do that. What we're really trying to do though with the MEP is say, look, this is a solution that you have to work with, Mr. General Contractor. So we can get you to this. This is what it's going to look like. Here's the requirements to get to this for everything from the plumbing to the HVAC. And by the way, a lot of these conversions, the HVAC is built, it's in the unit. So actually air handling is actually done in the unit as opposed to having to put all that weight onto the building system. So the building system is still going to manage the corridors and everything else. So we are working, like I said, we're working with Train, Carrier, Snyder, like there's a whole host and a raft, and none of this is necessarily new. And what's really interesting, all of our partners have verticals in residential and in commercial. So, and what we're doing is we're marrying those. So, I don't want to say it's straightforward.
Right.
Each is going to be different, but it's not like an engineer can't handle it.
Well, that, and they know both sides of it, so they can come up with
Yep.
unique situations and options when there's something different happening between a commercial and a residential. All right, here we go. We got some comments we'll get through. Juan Carlos Cabrero. That's a great subject to talk about and an interesting business opportunity. Yeah, I would agree with you. Thank you for tuning in, Juan. Lourdes Salinas from Alternative Housing Alliance in Sacramento, California. She also mentioned Juan Carlos Cabrero, need equals opportunity. Thank you, Lourdes, for joining us today as well. Hey, look at that. We got the big man from Washington, D.C., Greg Ugaldi. Greg updates the president and the Secretary of Housing multiple times a year on housing in this country and is a big supporter of Dave Cooper Live. Dave and Jen DC Live with another great presentation. Doug is sharing great information and providing inspiration as well. Always a pleasure to see you, Mr. Ugaldi. Thank you for commenting and tuning in today. Let's cross the pond. Henry Mickelberg. I knew I'd need a book. I got to put my hands up and hang on to the top of this comment. 2 things I am available to proofread your decks using Paris as the office to accommodation analog, given that they started the trend in the mid thousands. The rationale for this was being able to live in this place that you had to work in. Technology and the recent COVID remote work ziggis have resulted in these workers in Paris, Lyon, etc., moving out to the country to utilize the newfound freedoms. Do you think this fundamental paradigm is an issue in the U.S.? Great question, actually.
In terms of folks moving out of the centers to do work, yeah, that's I think just part of the whole trend. But what hasn't changed is the demand for housing. If anything, it's only getting worse. And I like I said, the big thing with a lot of the municipalities that are affected by this is that they really see a need for housing. And when it comes to Wall Street, it's got to pencil out. And so that's that whole distressed asset. So like I said, there's if there's a vacant office building, what other purpose could you possibly want to do in terms of, keeping that building for whatever reason? Tearing it down actually is an option for some, believe it or not. We figure about anywhere from 10 to 20% of the buildings will get taken down to ground to rebuild something else. But anyway, to answer that question, it's a tough one because it's so global. It's both, right? It's really both, right?
So another question though, do you require the building to be healthy prior to a retrofit?
Not
i.e. indoor air quality, moisture management. Some of these buildings have been sitting empty and all of a sudden they want to convert them. There could be bigger problems than just coming in and retrofitting the inside.
Yeah. So obviously site survey and engineering surveys, like, you're going to do your surveys. So it's not something we just go in. By the way, the older buildings actually convert better and are nicer to convert. So it's when you run into these huge floor plates that you really have to get creative. But the older buildings aren't necessarily, and a lot of the moisture issues are not in the older buildings, they're in the newer buildings that are really sealed up tight. So it just, again, it depends. But yeah, so because the older buildings were designed for airflow, right? So the windows opened and anyway, they convert very well. But we'd obviously do a site survey. But you don't necessarily, the building can have a lot of distress, if you will. And that's point of the zombie building. They haven't done anything, but there's also grants like the PACE grant, and we haven't even talked about the tax advantages and all the programs that are out there. And the US government, the federal government, just announced a program as well that they're going to be offering solutions for converting office to residential. And another part that we haven't talked about either is office parks. Office parks are huge opportunities to convert to residential. So anyway, it just keeps rolling.
Perfect. Hey, here's somebody that knows a little bit about something or another in the building world. Julian Bowren. Good to see you, Julian. I hope you are well. Big question. Can the dirt-based system achieve fire code compliant compartmentalization? I can't even say it. Compartmentalization. You know what I mean?
I got you.
Julian, stop with the big words. You know me.
So actually, Julian, we do have fire-rated walls. So, and they're using a magnesium type of compound, and it has UL, CSA. It's all been approved. So yes, we have that solution. It was actually the first thing that we focused on. So that's part of the solution.
He has a follow-up question. Another big question: do the walls go to the ceilings? If they don't, how are fire-rated partitions achieved?
They are actually achieved. They go all the way to the top of the plenum. That's code. So that's actually a separate system. So once everything is designed and put in place, one of the first things to show up are the fire rated walls. So, and they're on a very different system. Obviously, you're not using aluminum or anything of that nature. So they're not set up like traditional drywall, because what we do is that the wall's fairly thin compared to a drywall fire rated wall. So it goes in, it's installed, it goes right to the plenum. You can drill through it or there's ways to get through it and then seal it back up so it's fire rated as well. So that's how that's done. And then we can hang the dirt system off of that. So we actually set up a separate kind of system just for those fire rated walls that we can still hang everything off of. So the casework or anything else.
Perfect. Julian, thank you so much. Glad to see
you. It's good that somebody knows what dirt is. So that's even better.
Yeah, I think Julian knows what everything is. He's one of the smarter guys that I've run into in this industry. And he's never afraid to ask hard questions. That's what I love about him. All right, moving on here. We got Art Schmoen. Fascinating talk. Forest Economic Advisors. Good to see you, Art. I look forward to seeing you at the IWBCC, the Industrialized Wood-Based Construction Conference, coming up in a few weeks, Washington, D.C. And if nobody knows about that, you should, because it is now with Greenbuild, which is this is going to be 15, 20, 30,000 people. All right, put in the comments how many people are signed up for this thing. I bet it is a lot. So, Doug, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to leave with us as we wrap up here?
If anything, it's sort of like a top-down approach, if you will. So we're the only ones, by the way, that are taking on this market with a prefabricated solution. The only ones. So, and the good thing is the business case has been made over the last 20 plus years for prefabricated in an office footprint. But I think more so, it's sort of like this industry finally seems to be coming into its own, whether it's what we're doing or whether it's what people are doing with volumetric or modular. The Europeans have, for whatever reason, have always been warm to it. But now it's North America's turn. And we just think timing's everything in real estate. Like I've been doing it for 20 years. Timing is absolutely everything in real estate. And there's no question now's the time. What I don't want to see, I think we all have to kind of really just keep pushing that message forward. I don't know if there's any industry trade associations or anything. I'm happy to join anything that will move the ball down the field. But to me, that's just it. We all have to be focused on, getting housing into the factory as a solution and getting people, to accept it.
Excellent. Excellent. One last comment here. Gregory, how are you, sir? Repurposing building is a great addition to the housing shortage, and Doug and his team at Arthroto are all over it. Doug, I really appreciate having you on. For the rest of you out there, I am at ModLogic. That's right. In New Holland, Pennsylvania. We're getting ready to go walk through the largest modular permanent hospital structure ever built in the United States. And you're right. I'm going to live stream some of it. We're going to do some video on some of it. We're going to show you how it's happening and how it gets done. So stay tuned for that. And one of these days, I'll get back home to my own bed. It seems like I've been around the world lately. So with that said, Doug, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. And the rest of you out there, hey, man, it's Wednesday. Guess what that means? That means we got 2.5 days to get it done. Let's build it better. Let's keep moving this industry forward. We can all do it if we all work together and we communicate. I'm Dave Cooper. Doug Hayden, check out Arthroto. Thank you very much for joining us today, Doug.
Thank you. And thanks, Jennifer, as well.
Yeah, and say thanks to our sponsors, too, for allowing us to bring
and
all
thanks,
this information.
especially thanks to the sponsors.
That's right. That's the only way we get this done. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you, and as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.